let's talk about American beginnings. So, even though this is the second half of U.S. history that we're talking about in this course, we are going to have a foundation that we talk about some American beginnings, some foundational pieces that we have in our history, such as the Declaration of Independence. So, the Declaration of Independence is like a breakup letter between the United States and Great Britain. Great Britain used to own the United States. The United States was a colony of Great Britain. So, in this breakup letter, in this Declaration of Independence, the United States is declaring their independence from Great Britain, saying we are going to be our own country. And in here, it gives reasons why they are going to do that. And they're going to say, first of all, that we have these unalienable rights, these rights that cannot be taken away. Life, the right to live, have a life, right? The right to liberty, the right to freedom, in other words, and the right to pursuit of happiness, which meant property for the most part back then, but today means do what you love, be happy, pursue your own dreams. So in the Declaration of Independence, it says that we have these rights, these unalienable rights that cannot be taken away, and that if the government or someone in the government ever tries to take away these rights, that we have the right to overthrow and or create a new government that will protect these unalienable rights, and that the new government that is created should get its power from the consent of the governed. You are the governed. You are the people that the government is taking care of. The governed are the citizens. That is you. So new government should get their power from the people, from the governed, from you. That's one of our first documents that's created. So another document is the U.S. Constitution, which is actually going to set up the government for the United States. So it's going to have numerous constitutional principles and a Bill of Rights that we really care about in here. So the first constitutional principle is something called separation of powers. You're probably already familiar with it. What separation of powers does is create three equal branches of government. The legislative branch, which has Congress in it. Those are the people that make the laws. The executive branch, which has the president, the vice president, his cabinet, or otherwise known, or otherwise his team that's working with him. So the executive branch is the president, and the judicial branch is the Supreme Court and other federal courts which interpret the law. And the executive enforces the law. So these three branches have equal power, but they don't have the same power. Their power needs to remain balanced, which brings our next constitutional principle in play, checks and balances. So checks and balances is a principle of the U.S. government that says that our three equal branches of government should remain equal, and they have mechanisms to make sure that no branch becomes more powerful than other branches. We call these mechanisms to prevent power from increasing checks. So they each check each other and prevent each other from becoming too powerful. Okay, so we see those again here. Let's look at our others. So we also have federalism. When I talk about federalism, I just mean that there are different levels of government. You have the federal or the national government, you have the state government, you have the municipal government, you have the county government. All these different levels of government are referred to as federalism. And each of these levels of government have their own unique powers, but they also have similar powers to each other. For instance, the federal government or the national government has a military. They can declare war, so on, so on. A state government, as we see here, is in charge of schools. They're in charge of marriage, so on, so on. Okay? Popular sovereignty is what we refer to as people power. Our country has its ultimate source of power is the people. People exercise their power by voting. That's how the whole thing works. That's our popular sovereignty, people power. Republicanism, I want you to just remember the word representatives. If you see republicanism, you know that we have representatives. We don't have people that vote on every single issue. We have representatives that we vote for instead, and they work on our behalf. So the president works on our behalf. We vote for him. He does the job for us. Congressmen, governors, city councilors. Okay. Limited government. Our government has limits. They can't do whatever they want. Simple. Individualism. We all have individual rights. Those rights are in the Bill of Rights. These are our 7 constitutional principles. We also have a Bill of Rights in the Constitution. So we have 1 through 10. I'm not going to go through all of them. You're welcome to pause and read them right here. They're probably something you're familiar with. I want you to make sure you especially know number 1. It appears in many court cases, and most of us know number 1. It's really just our freedom of expression, all the different ways that we are allowed to express ourselves in this country, but most people just refer to it as the freedom of speech. And I want you to make sure you pay attention to the number 10, Amendment 10. So the 10th Amendment is going to say anything that is not in the Constitution, if it's not written in that document that sets up our government, it is a power that is reserved for the states. So if it's not in the Constitution, the states have the power to do it. Okay, they're in charge of it. They can have their own laws for it. That's going to appear in a court case related to the Great Depression and the New Deal. So make sure you remember that one. Another part of the founding of this country was a French man named Alexis de Tocqueville, who comes to America and observes that there are 5 values that make America very successful. He's going to say that America, for the foremost, has lots of liberty or freedom. So we look throughout history, we see there's lots of moments of freedom in the country. Of course, we know that. We have the Statue of Liberty, of course, which comes from France, strangely enough. We have laissez-faire. We'll see this in the Gilded Age, one of our first units, where the government is completely, well, excuse me, not completely, the government is hands off of business. They don't get involved in businesses in businesses too much. They kind of let businesses run themselves, do their own thing. But later on, laissez-faire kind of goes away a little bit, but it keeps coming and going as we go throughout U.S. history. So laissez-faire is a real important one. Make sure you remember government is hands-off business. Egalitarianism. This is just a fancy way of saying equality. We see the fight for equal rights throughout our history. Populism. Populism is ordinary people going out trying to make a change. We see that throughout our whole history. Ordinary people fighting against the government, fighting for their rights, trying to make better changes for themselves, and sometimes not necessarily better changes. And of course, we have individualism, where people are free to kind of pursue their own life, their own goals, their own dreams. Alexis de Tocqueville says that these 5 values make America successful, make America unique. Okay. The last thing we look at, we have 2 mottos in America. If you look at your money, you will find the phrase e pluribus unum, which is a Latin phrase which means out of many one. And what that means is out of the many of us, we are all still one people. We are all still Americans. Out of many of us, we are all still one country. Later on, we're going to add a second motto, which is "In God We Trust." You'll also find this on your money. It was added during the Cold War with the Soviet Union. It was created to show that the United States was a moral, godly country, and the Soviet Union was an atheist country. They're not allowed to have religion there. They were not one of those.